Yo, what is up, Earthlings? It's Joshledore. Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to take a look at some of the astronauts, not all of them, but some of the major astronauts or more well-known astronauts that believe that there is an ET presence or an alien presence already here on this planet, as well as some of the astronauts that have actually seen UFOs themselves. And as you all know, the alien issue, the UFO issue has been very popular in the masses lately and in the news even. I thought it was important to take a look at some of the most credible people that you can think of, like astronauts that have been to space, that there is an alien presence here on Earth and that they have been visiting us for a very long time. And this list comprises of 7 different astronauts, but like I said, there's many astronauts that believe that they have seen UFOs or believe that there is aliens. And I think after you watch this video, if you're doubting the fact that there might be aliens out there, or you're wondering where the proof is or where the evidence is, or maybe you didn't even know that there's astronauts or very credible individuals out there that believe in an alien or UFO presence. So get ready. All right, let's jump in. Astronaut number 1, Dr. Edgar Mitchell. For those that don't know Dr. Edgar Mitchell, he was a part of the Apollo 14 crew, and actually in 1971, he became the 6th man to walk on the moon. And Dr. Edgar Mitchell is obviously a very intelligent person and a well-renowned astronaut, and after his trip to the moon into space, he now believes that there is an ET presence and that they have been visiting us for a very long time. So he is a firm believer in aliens and extraterrestrial life. What's also very interesting about Dr. Mitchell is that he believes at one point in our history, peace-loving aliens with good intentions visited Earth on a mission to save humanity from nuclear war. He also has made the claim that the Vatican actually knows the truth about extraterrestrial life and they're hiding it from everyone. That's very curious indeed, because why would the Vatican know this information, as well as why would they keep it from everyone? He has also alleged that a number of UFOs have been sighted above nuclear bases actually. And he also believes that these UFOs actually disabled these nuclear weapons during the Cold War era. Dr. Edgar Mitchell is also convinced that the United States military and government covered up the Roswell UFO crash. Now those are just some of the claims that he has made. He has made a lot of different claims, but here's a clip of him talking about extraterrestrial life and aliens himself. Take a look.
But there's something else he'd like you to know.
I don't know how many or where or how they're doing it, but they've been observing us and here for quite some time, and we see these craft all the time.
Ed Mitchell is a straight talker and a true believer that we are not alone.
I believe what I'm saying, and I cite the evidence that I know.
He says that the government he served in the military and as an astronaut is perpetuating cover-ups of alien sightings, going all the way back to the legendary 1947 Roswell incident, an alleged alien spacecraft crash where remains were allegedly recovered.
The reason for the denial was, number one, they didn't know if these were hostile and could we protect ourselves from them. Didn't want the Soviets to know, so they devised to lie about it and cover it up.
He has no doubt there are alien craft observing Earth right now, and many more out there looking for us.
How many civilizations could there be, or do you believe there are out there?
Billions. We got billions and billions of stars in a galaxy, and billions of galaxies, and it doesn't take but a few planets around a few stars to have quite a few civilizations.
Crazy, right? This is a well-respected astronaut who's been to the moon and to space, and he is clearly a firm believer in extraterrestrial life. All right, number 2, astronaut Gordon Cooper. Gordon Cooper was actually one of 7 astronauts that took part in something called Project Mercury. This was actually the first American manned mission, and it ran from 1958 to 1963. And the spacecraft that he traveled during this Project Mercury was nicknamed Spam in a Can, because the spacecraft was actually automatically piloted, so he was merely a passenger in the spacecraft. What's interesting about Project Mercury is that it was actually a mission designed to spy on the Soviets during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And what I didn't know about this actually is that During this mission, so during his time in space flying around the planet looking for missile silos, Gordon Cooper actually on board the spacecraft, they had technology that was able to look at the surface of the planet and detect large metal anomalies basically so that they could find these missile silos. But what Gordon Cooper actually found is even more interesting. While flying over the Caribbean and other places around the planet, he actually discovered a large number of shipwreck sites. And being the smart guy that he was, he actually wrote down specific notes and coordinates for these shipwreck sites that he discovered from space actually. What's crazy about this is that Gordon Cooper actually gave all of these notes and detailed information and maps that he drew to a treasure hunter, and there's now a show on the Discovery Channel called Cooper's Treasure. And the treasure hunter he gave this information to is now attempting to locate over 150 shipwreck sites that Gordon Cooper discovered from space. Gordon Cooper was actually the first man to sleep in space, and while he was in space he claimed to have seen UFOs flying over Germany in 1951. He also claims that he saw flying saucers flying over a top secret American base. And later on he said he believes that these are extraterrestrial vehicles and their crews are visiting this planet from other planets, which are a little more technically advanced than we are on Earth. And he told this to the UN in 1984. Lastly, let's hear his thoughts on extraterrestrial life and UFOs from the man himself.
I've read about this incident you had in 1951, and you said you saw literally hundreds of unidentifiable flying objects.
Yes, they were flying quite high. How high we couldn't tell because we couldn't get anywhere near their altitude, but they were either very large craft way up or smaller crafts still well above what we could get to.
For a day and a half all of this happened, but then no one wanted to talk about it.
Well, we sent a report forward on it, and the answer that finally came back months later was they were probably high-flying seed pods.
6 years later, Cooper again encountered a UFO. This one definitely was not a weather balloon. While supervising flight testing at Edwards Air Force Base, his military camera crew actually filmed an unidentified saucer-shaped object landing near the site.
As they were sitting there filming, a little saucer came from, I say little saucer, it was a saucer, came flying over their heads, put down 3 little landing gear and landed right out on the dry lake bed. And they picked up their cameras and started over toward it, filming as they went. And when they got in fairly close to it, it lifted up, put the gear back in the wheel wells, tipped up, and took off at a great rate of speed.
Oh, I find this so cool. But astronaut number 3 is Deke Slayton. Now, Deke Slayton also saw these UFOs in 1951, and he was also a part of the same Project Mercury mission that Gordon Cooper was. And after participating in Project Mercury, Deke Slayton actually went on to become NASA's Director of Flight Crew Operations. Now, here's a clip of him talking about the UFO encounter he had and what he saw.
And about what he saw on a test pilot flight in 1952.
As I closed on this thing, well, it looked like a weather balloon, and that's what I presumed it was. And I had plenty of gas and time, so I decided I'd just come back around and make a pass on it. And I got around where I should have been coming back on this thing. All of a sudden, it didn't look like a balloon anymore. It looked like a saucer sitting on edge, about a 45-degree angle. I didn't have any gun camera film on board, unfortunately, or I'd have shot some pictures of it. And about that time, I guess whatever it was, for whatever reason, just took off climbing at about a 45-degree angle and just accelerated and disappeared. And I obviously couldn't follow it with an old piston engine fighter, so I turned around and went home.
He clearly saw something from out of this world, most likely. Astronaut number 4, Dr. Story Musgrave. Dr. Story Musgrave is a very impressive individual, very intellectual. In fact, he is probably the most formally educated astronaut of them all because he has 6 different academic degrees, actually. He was also the second astronaut to fly on 6 different spaceflight missions. 6 of them. Now, Dr. Musgrave has been a little bit quieter about the UFO phenomenon. Now he has made some comments about the UFO phenomenon that are very interesting. And he clearly believes in UFOs and extraterrestrial beings because he's actually showed up at a number of UFO conferences and symposiums to speak. What's also interesting about Dr. Musgrave is that he is very careful about how he talks about UFOs and extraterrestrials. And I think it's because he is so academically educated and he probably has been around a lot of people, a lot of very smart scientific people, and he wants to maintain his credibility and his reputation, and I don't blame him. So anytime he talks about this subject, he always says that he can't say anything for certain and everything is up for speculation, and until there is more evidence, there's no way we can say whether or not there's real UFOs or aliens for sure. Now here's a quick clip of him talking about UFOs and aliens.
Life is throughout our universe. It's everywhere. I can't come up with a number. Let's just say 1 trillion or a few trillion planets in which we have life, and that's it. So that's what we're dealing with. But you see, look at some planet and some creatures that got it together, and they were able to build technology over millions of years. They're doing star travel. That's how good they are. So I have no proof. I have the faith, and I have the certainty in my own being that there's millions of people doing interstellar travel. It's just the way it is.
I think, as you can see, he takes a very passive approach to extraterrestrial life, which is completely fine and is to be expected from somebody with his academic background, so fair enough. Alright, astronaut number 5, Viktor Afanasyev. I probably didn't say that quite right, but Viktor is a Russian astronaut and Air Force colonel. He has actually logged more than 2,000 hours of space flight in his career, and he has flown on more than 40 different aircraft. What's also interesting about Viktor is that he has spent more than 550 days in space, and he has been outside of the spacecraft 7 times, spending almost 40 hours just in space in general. He has been quoted in saying that, "I think we are not alone in the universe, and I believe that someone or something of extraterrestrial origin has visited Earth." He has also spoken about a UFO encounter that he had. So take a look.
Afanasyev saw an unidentified object turn toward his craft and begin tailing it through space.
It followed us during half of our orbit. We observed it on the light side, and when we entered the shadow side, it disappeared completely. It was an engineering structure made from some type of metal, approximately 40 meters long with inner holes. The object was narrow here and wider here, and inside there were openings. Some places had projections like small wings. The object stayed very close to us. We photographed it, and our photos showed it to be 23 to 28 meters away.
In addition to photographing the UFO, Afanasyev continually reported back to Mission Control about the craft's size, its shape, and position. When the cosmonaut returned to Earth, he was debriefed, told never to reveal what he knew, and had his cameras and film confiscated. Those photos and his voice transmissions from space have never been released.
Alright, astronaut number 6, Dr. Brian O'Leary. Now, Dr. O'Leary has never actually been into space, but he is a trained and official astronaut, nevertheless. He is actually one of 11 astronauts that in the 1960s were named for a Mars mission. Apparently, NASA had a mission to send humans to Mars in the 1960s, and he was one of those people picked. In addition to being an astronaut, Dr. O'Leary has become a respected physics professor at Princeton University after leaving NASA. He is also a colleague of the great Carl Sagan, and he actually taught physics at Cornell University with Carl Sagan, actually. He's one of the most interesting people I included in this video because he is a very strong believer in the fact that extraterrestrial life has visited us. They have been here for quite some time. So here's what he had to say straight from his mouth.
There is abundant evidence that we are being contacted, that civilizations have been visiting us for a very long time, that their appearance is bizarre from any kind of traditional materialistic Western point of view, that these visitors use the technologies of consciousness. They use toroids, they use co-rotating magnetic disks for their propulsion systems. That seems to be a common denominator of the UFO phenomenon and how they can work, manipulate time and space locally.
Alright guys, last but not least, probably the 2 most famous astronauts of all time, Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong. And for those who don't know who Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin is, I hope you do, but if you don't, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon on July 20th, 1969 as a part of the Apollo 11 mission. And actually, Neil Armstrong was the first man to walk on the moon, followed by Buzz Aldrin, who walked on the moon approximately 20 minutes later. What's extremely interesting about these two is that both of them claimed to have seen UFOs when they actually landed on the moon. Now, neither of these astronauts have ever really wanted to talk about this in the public for clear reasons that they were told not to talk about what they saw when they landed on the moon specifically. And after they came home, Neil Armstrong was actually very quiet about what happened on the moon and hasn't said a whole lot about it. But Buzz Aldrin has been a little bit more open about what they saw on the moon and what he thinks is going on the moon.
I saw this illumination that was moving with respect to the stars. We were smart enough to not say, Houston, there's a light out there that's following us. So technically, it becomes an unidentified flying object.
While Neil and Buzz were on the lunar surface, Neil switched to the medical channel and spoke directly with the chief medical officer, saying, they're here, they're parked on the side of the crater, they're watching us.
It was made very clear to him and the other Apollo astronauts who witnessed this first event, where when we landed at the crater on the moon, the rim at the top of the crater was, quote, crowded with UFOs, craft that were up there, multiple of them, and that these were filmed, and that there are, I know people personally who've seen that film.
And what a lot of people think is that when they told NASA what they found on the moon or what they saw on the moon, NASA of course told them to keep it quiet and to keep it a secret from the public, because the NASA did not want the public to know what it is that they saw on the moon. Obviously, all this information I just gave you about these astronauts and the things that they've said is their own personal opinions, so don't take my word for it. Look into this more. I think we have to take these astronauts who have been to the moon and been to space very seriously, because they would know better than any of us here on Earth. And if they did see these things and they do believe that aliens and extraterrestrial life are here, then we should at least consider what they're saying to be true. I know that for me personally, this only reaffirms my belief in the fact that there is extraterrestrial life out there and that they have most likely been visiting us for a very long time. But I want to know what you guys think about these astronauts, and what do you think about the things that they saw and the things that they've said? Do you believe them? Let me know in the comments what you guys think, and let me know if there's any other astronauts that I missed. Because like I said, these are just some of the most well-known astronauts that have made these claims that there are aliens and that there are UFOs, but there are so many other witnesses out there, I couldn't put them all in one video. So if there's some others that I missed, let me know in the comments who they are so I can check them out. But that's it for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, if you guys are into all over print apparel like the shirts that I wear in my videos, this one's got little aliens at the bottom actually. Pretty sick, right? But if you're into this kind of apparel, be sure to check out the link in my description box. It's for intotheam.com, and if you use the code Joshledore, you will get 10% off your order. So go check that out if you like this kind of stuff. And for those that don't know, I put out new videos every single Monday and Wednesday, and on Sunday nights we put out a podcast with my wife Kendall Ray called the Mile Higher Podcast. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already. But as always, stay woke, my friends.
Rocket 20, tranquility, we copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again.